You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.
So, hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Changing Reality. We are so excited to have you here today because we have a very special guest speaker on today's lovely episode. So, for all of you who may not be familiar with what Changing Reality is, or if this is the first time you're watching the show, Changing Reality is a show that features phenomenal people from all walks of life who are, in essence, changing the world around them. So we'll be hanging out and interviewing social change makers, entrepreneurs, business owners, to top executives, professors, academicians, musicians, and inspiring individuals from all across the world. And by listening to these inspiring stories on how they're changing the lives around them, we get to figure out how we too can use the experiences that we have to create meaningful impact in the people in our spaces as well. And I think that the power of stories is very, very important. And the more we circulate these stories around, the more growth happens. Personally, I founded and run a youth movement in Malaysia, where I'm from, called Ascendance, which today is an international youth movement that collaborates with organizations like the Malaysian Ministry of Education to international partners to provide an alternative education platform for any student who wants to change their reality. So we work with students from elementary all the way up to college through various sessions, programs, experiential learning activities, and projects that help them discover their passion, learn about themselves and the world around them, and start their own careers while they're still in school. That creates meaningful impact not just for themselves, but for the people around them too. And to date, we've been very fortunate to work with over 15,000 students in 970 communities and have incubated countless number of student-run projects, social enterprises, and many other things by students aged 8 to 25 years old. And the core that has been helping us do this, create this impact, changing the way kids look at lives, is hearing stories like this. Once they see the limitless possibilities of people from all across the world, they know that at whatever age they are, wherever they might be, they can make a difference too. And just to show you the power of the stories, in this September this year, we're actually having a conference for 50,000 students all across the globe called our New Age Learner Building the Future with Generation Z that is fully run by Gen Z. So they are the ones who are doing everything from putting up the presentations, videos, working with the thousands of students and teachers to enable the participants to get in, to even liaising with ministry organizations and international companies and partners to ensure that the conference goes on smoothly. And even the speakers themselves are multiple award-winning Gen Zs from over 10 different countries, 20 different speakers who are changing the world around them. So 10-year-olds from Tanzania who teach financial literacy, or 17-year-olds from Canada who work in the healthcare space, have their own healthcare-related startups. And all of these stories is what continuously creates that movement of change. And hopefully through shows like this, where we can meet inspiring people that we would otherwise not have the chance to hear their stories, we are able to create more change and more excitement in the lives of people all across the globe. So if you have any questions about that, do drop it in the show chat below. And moving to today's episode, as I mentioned, our guest today is a world famous professor and academician. He is someone who really navigates the digital landscape and teaches not only people like me who are college students, but consults for some of the global companies out there. In a world today where the digital landscape is rapidly changing, how does one even learn how to navigate this? And today's guest is someone who spent his life tracking the path of these mobile technologies and the effects they're having on industries. He is one of the most prominent thought leaders in this space and has also been ranked in the top 1% of the world's most influential researchers by the Web of Science between 2008 and 2018. Today, he has also worked with several Fortune 500 companies in the US, Asia, Africa, Europe as a consultant and coach to answer questions in this area as well. He is a professor of business and the director of the Masters of Science in the Business Analytics program at NYU Stern School of Business, one of the best leading universities in the world, and is the author of the best-selling multiple award-winning book, TAP, Unlocking the Mobile Economy, which has been translated into over 5 languages. And just to show how amazing he is as an individual, in 2014 he was named by Poets and Quants as one of the top 40 outstanding business school professors under 40 in the world, and by Analytical Week as one of the top 200 thought leaders in big data and business analytics. In less than 9 years, he rose to a full professor at, again, one of the world's top universities, and is the youngest recipient of several prestigious awards, including the Inform's ISS Distinguished Fellow Award, and was recognized as one of the top 30 management thinkers globally who are most likely to shape the future of how organizations are managed and led in the next generation. So I think without further ado, all of us would like to meet this amazing professional who has gone out there and today consults and even aids organizations like Apple, Alibaba, Facebook, and Google in the various work that they do in navigating the digital world, bringing to you Professor Anindya Ghose.
For having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. How are you feeling? We're so excited to have you.
Oh, I am super excited. No, it's a great day. You know, it's sunny, it's cloudy, it's not humid, it's beautiful.
All right, so good day for interview, perfect interview weather. And like just saying your introduction is like every time I think I read about you, my brain short circuits a bit because for someone very young, like relatively very young in the academic space, you have achieved so much and you have brought on so much research that I think really, really changes the reality that we live in. So first of all, like thank you on behalf of someone who likes reading about these transformations that are happening, but also it's very curious for us to find out, like, how did you actually start all of this? Like, were you always the kind of person since young who had this forward vision of wanting to change the world in this way, or were you different as a kid in a sense?
Oh, to put it simply, I had no idea what I would do till very late in life. So, you know, I prior to my academic career, I was in the industry, which I had, you know, started working for IBM and Hewlett Packard after an MBA. Before that, I had done undergrad engineering. Basically, you know, engineering, MBA, PhD, it's sort of is a telltale sign that I was confused for a really long time about what I need to do. I finally found my home as a professor in a business school, and it's been a fantastic, very fulfilling, gratifying journey since then.
Absolutely brilliant. And I think, you know, some of our previous conversations, you mentioned that you're from India, you actually from a village in India, and you grew up not exactly in the most affluent of places that many of probably the students at Penn that I know today are from. But at the same time, you've rose so much. Tell us a little bit about how you were growing up and how that has kind of like impacted you in the drive that you have today for your work.
Yeah, no, happy to. You know, to be frank, I had very, very humble, you know, background in terms of when I was a child. I think the best way is probably saying not even middle class, maybe lower middle class. So just to give you some context, when I was 5, my parents, we all moved to East Africa. You know, we were first in Tanzania for about 8 years, 9 years, and then in Zambia for about another 6 or 7 years. So I did spend a lot of my adolescent years in Africa, growing up, you know, speaking Swahili as almost my first language. At one point, I spoke it better than, you know, Hindi and Bengali. But then when I was in middle school, my parents decided that, you know, they should send me back to India because higher education wasn't as, you know, great, you know, over there in Tanzania or Zambia. So I came back to, you know, stay with my grandmother and sort of the extended family, uncle and aunts. And they are sort of, you know, my grandmother who's really responsible for raising me between the age of 10 and 18. And so, and I wish she was alive today to see where I am, but unfortunately she's not. But, you know, I am obviously grateful to her. So during those, you know, almost a decade, from middle school to high school to college, etc., we were living, you know, in the outskirts of Calcutta in a sort of a small suburban, you know, you can call this a small town. It actually, even today, looks more like a village than a city. The place is Jinjira. Officially, it's part of Calcutta, but it's really, you know, way out there. And, you know, like I said, we didn't have much. My grandmother, she tried to give everything she had to me, but, you know, she didn't have much to give. And what that inculcated in me is the value of money, the value of saving every single rupee. And just to give you some context, my home, the distance between my home and the place where the school bus would arrive was easily a 20-minute walk one way, so about a 45-minute walk both ways. And yes, I did have an option of taking public bus to go from home to the school bus stop instead of walking 45 degrees Celsius in the hot, humid weather. But the bus fare was 2 rupees each way, and I figured on many days if I would save that 2 rupees, I could actually use that to eat some snacks, my favorite snacks like Golgappa, because I didn't have enough pocket money. And so, I often reflect on those days because the fact that I would have to save 2 rupees, this is Indian rupee, today is in US dollar is like, I don't know, 5 cents. So the fact that I had to save 5 cents to be able to enjoy my snacks, on a very frequent basis, inculcated in me the value of money. And so, I have been poor and I've been, fine, and I understand what it takes to go from, that level of, I wouldn't call it poverty, but something close enough to that, and to come to where I am today, which is I have a house in Manhattan in Park Avenue, one of the most expensive real estate places in the world, right? So I never forget where my roots are, and the fact that if I can go from a small town/village in the remote part of India and establish a presence in one of the world's biggest cities, anybody can do it, right? So I hope listeners get some motivation from this story. Sometimes I think I'll write a book from Jinjira to Park Avenue. Maybe one day I'll write it.
You should. I would definitely read that, and I definitely think people listening in are so inspired, because it's not easy to make that transition to the level of success you've had today, and especially hearing how you were as a kid and how you actually grew, and the things that I say the things that happened in your life that actually enabled you to have that drive, that values that brought you forward. I think that's very important for us to see, because it gives us a sense that, oh, it's possible for us too. So thank you so much for sharing, in a way. And how were you like growing up, in a sense, when you were at that point? Like you mentioned, you were a bit confused, like doing your BA and like your other things, and you actually have a bachelor's degree in engineering. So what was it like at that point of age, like for when you were like my age at 18, 19, in a sense, and were you figuring out like, okay, like what I want to do, what do I like doing? How did you actually come with the decision to take the next step in your life?
Yeah, so in the mid 1990s, when I was doing my engineering, basically growing up in India at that time, we really had like 2 options. You're either going to be an engineer or you're going to be a doctor. And if you're neither an engineer or a doctor, then
I know people who have those 2 options only. So okay, got it. Sometimes in a company.
Exactly. It's not like, you guys, your generation has so many great options, and that's exactly how it should have been. But for our generation, pretty much if you are not an engineer, doctor, it wasn't, you didn't really make it. So, I didn't want to be a doctor. So I said, okay, fine. And by default, it has to be engineering. But then when I entered, when I started pursuing undergrad, I had this sort of thought process that getting into a top business school in India would be my dream. And so, because I actually, before my undergrad, I thought I would make it to the top engineering institute, the IITs in India. But for various reasons, even though I was one of the toppers in my school, but my school is, even as of today, the world's largest school. It's called South Point High School. We had 950 students in each year. And, I would normally be in the top 10 or top 15 of that entire cohort. And so everybody thought I would crack the IITs, and I thought as well. But various circumstances, led to a situation where I didn't crack the IIT. So I went to the next best set of engineering schools called the NIITs. But I was very deeply disappointed that I didn't make it. And so I promised myself on day 1 of undergrad that my next journey is going to be in the best business school in India. And so I was from day 1 motivated to get into the IIMs, Indian Institute of Management, and which is what happened after 4 years. But even as I was pursuing my MBA, to the point about being not sure what I want, I wasn't sure what I wanted. I joined IBM and Hewlett Packard as a consultant, but I wasn't really liking it. I had terrible bosses. They would just, make life miserable on a daily basis. And for some reason, I thought corporate life is all about terrible bosses. And I said, okay, what is that one profession where you don't have a boss? Well, turns out either you're an entrepreneur or you're a professor. Actually, entrepreneurs still have, bosses. The investors who fund are your bosses. But for us, we don't really have a boss, right? And so that's how I started thinking, okay, let me pursue academia, not because I'm so smart, but because I will not have a boss.
Good motivation, and it seemed to work out very well. So
yeah, thankfully, I'm very grateful for how things have turned out. And I should also add, one other thing that I also realized early enough in my PhD that I'm not the smartest kid on the block, not by a distance. But what I have is I have ambition, I have drive, tenacity, perseverance, discipline. I have these 5 traits, which I believe always would compensate for the fact that I'm not the smartest kid on the block. And so, my mantra in life has always been, there are no shortcuts to the top. Okay. So if any of you young folks are listening, even if you are the smartest kid on the block, there is no shortcut to the top. You have to burn the midnight oil, to get to the top. So please keep that in mind.
no, and I think that's very true, because it's like someone once told me that your winging it can only go so far. So it's like your whatever talent you have, whatever things that come naturally to you can only take you to a level. But if you really want to go to that next level, you have to put in the work. You have to turn it into something that is precise practice, that is filled with effort and love, so that you become the best of the best. And I think hearing it from you, we shall all reconsider our schedules and put in more time to focus on our goals and the work that we do. And how did you even pick, like, going into your PhD years, and how did you decide on that you would like start working or learning about this industry that was the internet, how it's rapidly changing the markets and different industries? I mean, in your book, you mentioned that it was during your PhD years that you became fascinated by how the internet was changing markets and industries. So how was that process? Like, what was that one moment where you go like, oh, this is something that I think I can devote my time and energy into learning more about?
Yeah. Again, in all candidness, when I joined the PhD program, I had a different plan. My plan was, yes, secret, right? My plan was I would pursue, in a PhD program in the US, you have to do, after 2 years of work, you have to take an exam called the qualifying exam. And if you pass that, then you're on road to the PhD. If you pass, but you also have the option of dropping out after passing, in which case you get a master's degree. And so my plan was, when I got into Carnegie Mellon, was I'm going to get that master's degree for free, because PhD students have no tuition to pay. Instead, we get stipends, right? And I would basically get the master's degree and join the corporate world in the McKinsey or Goldman Sachs. Compared to the MBAs that have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would get away with that free degree. And that was a secret plan, right? However, fortunately, after the first year of the PhD program, I realized I'm really loving this whole idea of academic research and the potential to then have an impact on society through teaching and, impact companies through my research, change policies of governments. All of those things dawned on me after the first year, and I realized, okay, this is it for me. I do not want to be like sneaking out of this program and getting a master's degree and, joining a McKinsey and Goldman Sachs. I want to be a business school professor. And then once I decided that, there was no turning back. It was, burning the midnight oil every single day. I slept only 4 hours a day for the entire 4 years, every day, 365 days a year. Okay. And that's what I mean by, hard work and dedication and perseverance will get you to your dreams. So that's how it really started in terms of how I changed trajectory. In terms of the topics that you mentioned, yes, I had prior experience in the industry with IBM and Hewlett Packard, and so this is during the dot-com boom in 1998, 1999, 2000. So I was always fascinated by what's happening with the internet world, with the startup world, with dot-coms in particular. And when I joined the PhD program that same year, in the year 2000, just before the dot-com bust, I was very sure that any academic research I pursue has to be in that space. that's really how I got into this thing. I started, digging more and more into this, and I realized there's really not any interesting work done so far, because it was early days of the internet, right? And so, sometimes, as I say, luck has. I always believe that luck is a huge factor in, my own journey, and I have no qualms in acknowledging that I was lucky that the timing of my PhD program worked out in a way where I could choose these exciting topics before anybody else would choose, and that would then set the platform for sort of future trajectory success.
Absolutely brilliant. And upon finishing your PhD program, you became a professor at NYU, one
Yeah.
of the world's best business schools. So I guess your mission to go to the best schools didn't end at the academic level. It went on to even your career in a sense. So how do you even become a professor at such a prestigious university? And tell us maybe some stories from your early years as a professor. Like I love college students. I am a college student, but they can be the worst sometimes. So I can only imagine like having to teach a bunch of undergrads would not be the most fun thing on the planet. But you seem to be a professor who has gotten amazing reviews from the students that you've taught. So tell us, what's your secret sauce as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to demystify teaching undergrad is a huge fun. It was huge fun.
Yeah.
Honestly, Harsha, I still am, call it friends. I still am friends with my undergrad students from 15 years back. They would, if you meet in the streets, we'll obviously, say more than a hi and hello, but we always stay in touch on social media. And I love seeing their life trajectories, from personal life milestones, engagements, marriage, children, to professional careers. I'm still in touch with the vast majority of them. I just love, and my first few years I did teach the undergrads only before I moved on to teaching MBAs and exec MBAs. So yeah, I think to your question, look, when I was finishing my PhD, I had two dream schools, and it was either UPenn or NYU. And I know I'm not saying just because you're from UPenn. Honestly, my two dream schools were Wharton School and Stern School. And not every school recruits every year. So that year it so happened that the Stern School was recruiting. I got the offer. I was delighted, thrilled beyond my, I remember getting a call on the phone from the department chair about them making an offer, and I just jumped, shrieked in joy, 2 feet away from the ground, up the ground. Yeah, so I was, it was great to start my journey at Stern. During these years, as I mentioned before, I also spent some time at Wharton. I was visiting Wharton. They had come back to me with an offer when I just gotten promoted to associate professor, and given my past love for spending some time at Wharton, I decided I'm going to spend some time there. But really, mostly it's been at NYU Stern. It's been NYU is a fantastic university, very, very supportive of junior faculty. Very creative in how it gives us the flexibility to do many things. Obviously New York City is just a terrific place to live as well. So yeah, no complaints. All good so far.
All right, it's very nice to hear. So sad that we missed you to have you as a support. It's okay. I'll go and complain by myself, write a letter. But okay, I'm glad to know that you got into one of your dream schools as a professor as well. Oh my gosh, we should learn goal setting from you at the very least, And even after becoming a professor, as you started doing your research, as you started really establishing yourself as a prominent thought leader in this space, you even started venturing out to consulting. You consult today, I think, for some of the biggest companies out there across the globe, Fortune 500 companies across 4 continents, as we mentioned earlier. So how did you kind of make that, I wouldn't say transition, but open up that new branch of consulting? Not all professors do this. Some of them focus solely on their research, some of them on this teaching that they do, but you opened up this whole new avenue and started doing something that has so much industry impact. Why did you start doing that in the first place, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the why has a simple answer, and the answer is that I was always motivated in pursuing my academic research, my key motivation wasn't just an academic publication. It was really sort of influence and change how organizations operate or how they make decisions, how policies are enforced by policymakers. I wanted to have an impact on the real world. And so I would generally try to choose topics or research projects that I could see in the future would have such an impact. Okay? Now, the way it works in the US system is, prior to tenure, you're not encouraged to engage much with the industry. You're encouraged to focus on your research. But once you have been promoted to an associate professor with tenure, then, those restrictions or limitations are loosened. And then you have the flexibility to reach out to the rest of the world and sort of look for opportunities for impact. And if things go well, then generally those opportunities come to you. By then, there's word of mouth about your reputation, about your research, and corporations and companies will often reach out to you. And that's sort of what started happening to me as well. Within a year or so of getting promoted to getting tenured, lots of floodgates of opportunities opened up. Initially, they were data science. My background is I'm a professor of data science and marketing analytics. So, usually, initially, the opportunities were in that space where companies would say, hey, look, we have a lot of data and we're not sure what to do with it. Can you help us guide how we can make meaningful use of these data sets to drive decisions, and make sort of important changes within the organization? So that's what we call data science consulting, where I would help them build like econometric models, machine learning models, and put them into use and see those changes. It's very, very fulfilling to see that. Then I saw many companies inviting me to join their board, like an advisory board position, where it was less of the hands-on data science work, but more strategic feedback to the founders, strategic feedback to the entrepreneurs about how to take the next step, going from a pre-seed to Series A, Series B, that sort of thing. I am on the board of 8 or 9 companies at this point, and that's another different kind of a gratification, how I sort of draw satisfaction in what I do. But perhaps the most impactful of my consulting has been in the world of litigation. This is complex litigation where in the US, we have these corporate lawsuits, for instance, where Apple is suing Samsung, or the government is suing Facebook and Google for antitrust, those sort of things. And around 2014, 2015, it was very sort of serendipitous. I got a call from some economic consulting firm saying, hey, would you like to have lunch? And we would like to see if you're interested in doing this sort of consulting. And honestly, Harsha, I had no idea that world existed. So the first time I was hearing about, my research can be used by Apple to fight this billion-dollar battle against Samsung, really? Or my research can be used by Snapchat to fight this multi-billion-dollar intellectual property issue? I had no idea. So those meetings opened up my eyes, and since then, I have been working in economic consulting, and I've really learned a lot by working very deeply with these companies. And I must say that in addition to so the main reason why I enjoy the consulting is it really enhances my teaching and research. There is a very nice virtuous cycle, between the three. As I work with companies, I bring those learnings back in the classroom, especially when I teach executives or senior C-suite people. They then take my learnings and realize that, maybe there is an additional problem I can help them solve. And sometimes that's a research project, sometimes that's further consulting. So it's a nice virtual cycle there, and I've really enjoyed that.
Absolutely amazing. And there's so many things that I think we can ask. So I'll just start off with, tell us a little bit about this virtuous cycle. I mean, you've got, yes, I see that connection definitely. It's like you've got the consulting bit of it. That is like the industry relationships, that like real-time feedback of what's actually happening. Then if that goes back into your research, it makes you really the best of the best and very current in what you do. And of course, you go back and you feed the bright minds of today that will eventually become the next future leaders and all of that. So definitely something that is absolutely like amazing, like how you built that up. But honestly, you do that. On top of that, you're an author, you're on the boards of so many companies. Where do you find the time, in a sense, to do all of this?
When you love what you're doing, you don't worry about the time. Somehow all that work just fits in the time you have, and yeah, I do have multiple hats here at USI. I'm an educator, but I'm also an advisor, speaker, C-suite coach, consultant, all of that. I enjoy it. Like I said, it goes beyond the financial aspects of all of this. It really keeps me on my toes. I'm continuously learning. I love that Steve Jobs mantra: "Stay hungry, stay foolish." I love it because that's just how I think about the next few years as well. And the other thing, like when we do all this hard work of research and teaching, I want to come back home and feel gratification. I want to sleep at night knowing that whatever I'm doing in the classroom, I'm adding value. Otherwise, I'm not the kind of person that be comfortable not doing so. People are different. Many people are okay with that. Many professors are okay with that, and I'm not. And so, to your question, why I have always believed in the virtuous cycle of research, teaching, and consulting is because I know that using this three-pillar framework, I can make tangible impact on students and society, on companies, and that's where I draw my gratification from. That's what really excites me. Every day when I wake up, like even if it's a small, tiny bit of a difference in somebody's lives, if when I can enhance my students' careers, I know that their families are better off, their extended families are better off, right? So the trickle-down effect of having an impact in the classroom is not just on a given student's career, it's on multiple individuals in the family of that individual, right? And that's how I think about why I'm doing what I'm doing. Maybe, I don't know if that helps.
No, I think that does. And I feel like many times it's like focusing on that purpose. And I like how you painted that virtuous cycle, and seeing the effect of that cycle is in a way something that helps helps you kind of find the time for everything. I feel like if all of us can just identify how the different areas in our own life feed into each other, then that would, number one, make us much more happier people and a lot more kind of like inspired to do the work that we do. And I feel like sometimes we lose a little bit sight of how things are connected in our life, and that gets us tired and off track. So thanks for the reminder, personally. I'll go and write that down. And you also mentioned the impact that your work creates, and I think we're entering unprecedented times in the world of in the mobile world, in the tech and internet world. So there is definitely a lot of spaces which I can see would need the research that you do. I mean, like tech companies today are some of the largest. I mean, they are the largest companies out there. Recently, some like companies like Amazon even send people to space. So I don't see that like anytime they're going to slow down. And they are, in a sense, it's still very foreign because a lot of the laws that we've had haven't really, like, they're being made right now to regulate, to identify problems, to mitigate like disputes and all of that. So your research and your role as kind of like a consultant in that litigation field is also very important. But at the same time, these are billion-dollar companies, and I'm going to be honest, like personally, for as a student, maybe as a young entrepreneur, when I make decisions about my own few like $100, I'm still like, oh my gosh, how do I decide? How do I consult or something like that? But you literally, like, your work impacts billions of dollars of cash flow, lawsuits, and all of that. So how do you have the courage or the faith in your research? Like, obviously, you are the leading champion in this. It's just that even then, do you ever get nervous about like your consultation work with them? And if so, how do you still like do the best that you can do and like bring the best self forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And now you're going to make me admit my weaknesses, which is great. It's totally fine.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. Look, to your question about nervousness and apprehension, absolutely. Like there are days when I wake up and say, okay, I am going to be testifying in this multi-billion-dollar lawsuit on behalf of one of the world's largest companies. And my testimony can have a severe impact for better or for worse on the outcomes. And, millions or billions of dollars will be exchanging hands based on what I'm saying, how I'm saying. So there are, of course, it is nerve-wracking, no question. But at the same time, it is very rewarding when things work out your way. And so, early in my career, when I was trying to have this sort of impact on companies through my litigation work or data science work or, speaking, I would spend a lot of time prepping because I realized, look, there are things I can control. What can I control? I'm going to put in my 100%. I'm going to burn the midnight oil, do 100-hour weeks, make sure I leave no stone unturned, and then leave the rest to God, right? If Most of the time when you work hard, fortune favors the brave and the diligent, and it worked out, right? But have I ever had imposter syndrome? Absolutely. I mean, I'm a first generation immigrant in this amazing country, and this country has given me so much in life. There are days when I wake up and say, do I really deserve all this? And then I tell myself, look, you worked hard, you deserve it.
I think that is very, very well said in a sense. And again, we may not be at the level of making the decisions or the work needed as you are, but I feel like for all of us who are facing that imposter syndrome, for all of us who are facing that insecurity in a sense, or not sure what we can control and what we can't, that sharing is very important. So thank you so much for uncovering a little bit about your weakness. I promise we won't tell anyone.
No. Go for it. I'm in my full candid mode today. You can ask me whatever.
All right, most candid mode. Okay, got it. So maybe we could talk a little bit about your book moving forward. So you wrote this absolutely amazing book. I've read a little bit of it, and I'm already hooked to some of the insights. And also, you're a very fun writer to read. I'm just saying, for subject matter that is very a little bit technical in a sense. It's actually understandable and it's actually quite engaging. So your book is called TAP: Unlocking the Mobile Economy, and you published this in 2017. So what made you want to write a book in the first place? Were you hit by inspiration and someone came down and said, you need to write this book and all? Or was it some feeling that you had that, all right, I've got this important research that I think needs to be shared? What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so the main inspiration was that having done almost a decade and a half of research in the internet, digital, mobile space, every time I would get in front of companies, executives, managers, a real world audience, and speak or give a keynote or do an executive education or do some sort of consulting work, they would often come back and ask me, Professor, have you considered putting everything together in a book? Because we would love to read everything. And because I was just distributing PDF, PowerPoint slides and some documents, but I didn't have anything together. And
this is too valuable. Let us pay you for this research in a sense.
Yeah, and when I kept hearing that over and over again, I realized, what? It sounds like there's a book market for this. So that's what I started thinking about in 2015. I got a few publishers approached me themselves saying, look, we think you have a lot to write in terms of a book. And eventually I decided to go with MIT Press. There's a very well-known publisher in the technology and data science space. And then that's how the book came about. And, its success far exceeded my expectations. It's been great. Won a number of awards, was on the bestseller list in many countries. It's been translated into, Mandarin, Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, Taiwanese, and so on. It's been great. And I think, now starting to think about whether I should write a second book, but we'll see.
This is the book about your life story, right? That you mentioned earlier. That buy. Okay, we're still betting on it, but okay.
That'll probably have to wait till I'm really old. Maybe at this point, that's a little too premature. Maybe someday. Yeah.
Okay, by that time you probably have to do a few volumes, Professor, because already now you're the youngest professor in this field. Okay, so I have to wait now. Gosh, so luckily you're having this interview to give them some spoilers to that. But even then, many people want to write a book, they get inspired, they try to write a book, but then they sit down in front of the laptop, and after 2 weeks of writing heavily, they lack the inspiration to go on. Was that the case for you? Was there any roadblocks in that journey, or even times where you hit writer's block? And if so, how did you actually overcome it? Because obviously you did, and you wrote this best-selling amazing book then on. So how do you come up with like solutions to the roadblocks that you face? And again, I've got to ask, insecure teenager, before knowing that you would win all of these awards and things like that, how did it feel putting out your work and putting yourself out there through this publication?
Yeah, so some wise man once told me that whatever you're doing, don't worry about the rewards, right? Just do it for the sake of doing it and give it your best, So like what I mean to say is when I was thinking about writing this book, I wasn't thinking about awards or best-selling lists or translations. My motivation was put my entire body of consulting and research into one-stop shop so that the world can read what I've done, right? And of course, now the challenge, as you point out, there are challenges, many challenges. The first challenge was, I'm a nerdy, mathy kind of a guy. My research is mostly, econometrics, machine learning, experiments. So and like many other business school professors, we have this challenge. We have to translate all that, equations and math and Greek symbols into stories. Okay? Especially if you're writing a book for the managerial and average man audience, right? I didn't want to write a textbook for academic reasons. I wanted to write a book that somebody could pick up on an airport bookshelf, for instance. So it was not easy. There are those challenges in terms of how to make it work. My second biggest challenge was my personal lifestyle, my travel. Okay? So pre-COVID, I would travel every week. Every week I was on a flight to somewhere on the planet. Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, within the US somewhere. I would clock, like on Delta, I had triple diamond status. Very few people have that. Sometimes the pilot would come and greet me personally. They would leave like a handwritten note on the seat, thanking me for being one of the, super, super elite flyers. So I was in that lifestyle. And what that means is I have very little time sitting in one place. But to write a book, you have to sit in one place. So my favorite pastime in a flight, transatlantic or Pacific flight, is watching movies, right? So what I had to do was I had to change my mindset and say no movies. Okay, write a book. That means you need to have a structured, disciplined time. Every minute you spend on a flight, you need to account for it. So I actually had a spreadsheet for every week. I had a spreadsheet in this 8 hours or 12 hours or 16 hours. How am I going to divide my in-flight time? Okay. At best, I would give myself one movie to watch, like 2 hours, and the rest of the time is divided between sleeping and working on the book. Every week, every Excel sheet had that specific time in place. That's how I got the book done. Otherwise, I'd be like still sitting thinking about it.
Okay, so no excuse for us who complain we don't have time or we cannot fit it into our schedule, right? Okay, you basically cut the hour of Netflix you guys have and like
Yes.
Thank you. That was a very direct answer. Okay, I got it. So I'll tell the other.
It was hard, Harsha, because I love watching movies. Even today, I would watch one movie every day. Today, I can afford to spend 2 hours watching a movie, right? So I'm telling you. But in my younger days, I couldn't afford it, but I wanted to, and it was hard, right? Giving up your favorite activity is hard.
Okay. So keep a list of the movies, keep a spreadsheet for the time. Like we can use the time now, and then later when you got when the next pandemic comes, we can all sit at home and watch a movie a day. Okay, got it. And hopefully we will swap some we'll get some movie recommendations from you later as well.
Yeah. Or you can quiz me. You can show me a scene from a movie. You can quiz me which movie is this from. There's an 80% chance I'd be able to say that it's what the movie is.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my god, that is amazing. All right, and I
That's
want to
how
ask.
Bad it is. That's how bad it is at my end.
That's how bad it is. Okay, so all right, this is another changing reality we need to have on how movies have impacted one of the greatest minds ever. We can have a panel session. You'll definitely be my first guest. And maybe moving into the movie score, the whole media kind of segment of talking about things. It's you have like spoken about so many things. I feel like I'm gonna expose myself for a moment. So normally before I interview someone, I try to watch as many of their talks, their interviews as possible. But you have so many talks and interviews that I could not watch all of them in time before the interview. So I only managed to watch a few, and the range of topics that you speak on is amazing. So everything from some of the insights that you had in your book to even recent ones on TikTok. I saw you did one for one of the news channels in the US about how TikTok is changing the landscape of things. So among all of these things that you spoke about, among all of the things that you have shared about, if you could only pick one topic, or what has been your favorite thing to share about with the public so far? One thing that you have felt like they didn't know, and by giving this message, you really made an impact or made a difference.
Yeah, I think, look, broadly, I've been very curious about, consumer behavior on mobile phones and how companies and organizations can use that data to enrich and make people's lives better. More recently, to your question about one of my favorite topics is mobile healthcare. Okay, so as you know, right, there are a lot of people in the world that suffer from chronic diseases like diabetes and blood pressure and cholesterol and arthritis and so on. Now, in this world of wearable devices like mobile health apps, people who wear a wearable device on their wrist and they're trying to quantify the behavior, there has been an open question about, does the adoption of mobile health devices or apps or wearable devices actually make a difference in people's lives? Okay. And there was nobody who would actually answer that question. So a few years back, my co-authors and I started working with a large consortium of companies in Asia that involved, doctors and physicians and pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, mobile health app platforms. And we carried out one of the world's largest randomized experiments trying to understand that when people adopt wearable devices and mobile health apps, do they make changes in their lifestyle, which then shows up in concrete, positive healthcare outcomes. And we showed after a 15-month period using large-scale experiments that yes, when people are randomly given the devices, there is statistically significant evidence that they will change their lifestyle. They will sleep longer, eat healthier, exercise more, and exercise better. And these short-term lifestyle changes lead to longer-term healthcare benefits, such as a reduction in blood glucose levels, a reduction in diabetes levels, a reduction in doctor visits, physician visits, hospital visits, a reduction in healthcare expenses. So that, of late, that area is becoming one of my favorite areas to work on because, this can have direct impact on the common man, and in terms of, healthcare, which is, healthcare and education are the two most important things in our lives, right? And so, I'm looking to looking to do more and more work in this space now. That paper got published in one of the top journals in our field. I also got a Harvard Business Review article of that article, and so on. So I'm looking to do more work in this space of mobile health care to see, what else can we do in this space, so that, at the moment, that is a very interesting topic for me.
Okay, that is very interesting. I'm going to be honest. I've been debating, should I save up for mobile healthcare device or something like that. But now I think that I'm being persuaded to yes, I should start saving up. So thank you, and I will go and make sure I'll read up and listen to some of your research on it, so that I can make a more informed decision. But no, I think that like just like that, that's one of the reasons why I think you're so interesting to talk to, because it's like the work that you does actually has very real applications. And do you have any stories of people coming up to you and saying like, oh my God, thank you for this research. I've changed the way my business runs. So I'm sure you have billions of stories like this, but like, I've changed my own lifestyle or the way that I run or I work with students or something. And maybe could you share one or two of these stories that touched your heart?
Yeah, no, for sure. There are a lot of personal stories where, anecdotes where individuals will come and say, I know that article really made me rethink about how I think about advertising and pricing or marketing promotions. But there are also much more broader, examples of companies saying, look, we've read your book, we've read that article. Can you help us on our digital transformation journey? So for instance, in 2019, just before COVID hit, I helped Marico, which is a $1 billion consumer packaged goods company based in Asia, primarily in India, but they also have a presence in the Middle
I
East. And
yeah.
you know them, yeah. I helped them navigate a 9-month digital transformation journey where they basically were trying to change from being a more physical analog company into a digital company with a significant presence in social media and a digital economy. So that opportunity arose because the CEO and the chairman, they had heard about me and my work from venture capitalists that they work with. And my first meeting, they were quite clear that they were saying, look, you can really help us make an impact, and we are a large organization. And right away, I thought, okay, if I can help the C-suite, CMO, CEO, CEO, that will have a trickle down effect on middle management, and then on the more newer junior employees, which would then have a trickle down effect on their families, but also the consumers of America's products, they would benefit, right? So that's how I always see that not just like my own work, but other the handful of other business school professors who have an applied research who actually work with companies. I think the trickle down effects of that impact are not just on a given company. There's a much larger impact from their families to consumers of the products and services.
Okay. Very, very true. And like again, that's one large company that I know of. So to hear that you are one of the people working behind the scenes to make this transformation, I think that I personally would have to like seen that change. So wow. And like, thank you, I guess, on behalf of the many other companies that you work with and improve my life as a consumer. Like now, every time I like take a canned drink or like a bag of chips, I'm gonna be wondering, like, did the professor help them transform digitally? So that will be like my thought process. So thank you for that as well, and for anything for the other companies. And
Yeah.
like yeah, and like you also have a lot of not I wouldn't say predictions for the future, but you often comment about how technology is changing our own lives on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that I hear you often say is that there'll come a time where when we go out out of the house, the refrigerator will call us and say like, "Hey, we're running out of groceries. In a sense, could you get this for me?" And then we'll be like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh." Or like our hot water system will be able to talk to each other and say, "Oh, the kettle needs it more right now than the bath. Sorry, guys, we're rewiring hot water there." So like you give a lot of these stories of like how the future of technology is going to like really change like tenfold, and how it's already we're seeing those changes in our day-to-day life. But you also mentioned you like movies, so I've got to ask: are we headed to a science fiction doomsday in a sense where the machines take over, or what do you expect the future to hold in a sense?
I think, look, perhaps AI will be the single largest influence on our lives going forward. It's already affecting a lot of the meaningful aspects of our lives. Many of the apps that we use on our phone are powered by, deep learning, machine learning, which are integral components of AI. That example that you mentioned about the refrigerator calling me on my cell phone to remind me that I will run out of fruits and milk and eggs. That's an example of an IoT, the Internet of Things. And two of my PhD students, Panos Adamopoulos and Vilma Todri, we actually wrote a paper on that phenomenon, Internet of Things, that got published in one of the top journals here as well. I think there's a lot more application of IoT that you're going to see, and more and more automation will obviously enable some of those connections. The devices will be talking to each other. It's not just Alexa on your phone, but your washing machine, your dishwasher, your refrigerator will be talking to you through your phone, and just making our lives better and better. I know some people have concerns about like privacy and sort of security, and I've never really seen what those concerns. I've never really understood those concerns because I've always believed that if you have nothing to hide, what do you have to worry? I always have this uncanny feeling that only those people who have things to hide, they start screaming about like privacy and security, and you know. Yeah, I mean, my life is an open book. I have nothing to hide, so I'm okay on that front. Um, but I think we'll continue to see this yin yang, two sides of the same coin. On one hand, you have AI and data. On the other hand, you have privacy. Okay? I think we will continue to see these conversations, swinging back and forth. But I still believe that the world is going to be increasingly, a better place, a more efficient place, a more smooth, seamless place in terms of transactions. That being said, my biggest worry is, income inequality, right? And I can already see that all this progress that we're making through AI is having a severe detrimental effect on income inequality. Like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and nobody really has an answer how to fix it, right? Like a lot of us have seen ideas from other thought leaders or governments and policymakers, but honestly, I haven't seen one particular idea that I found compelling. Okay, so I think that is something we all have to collectively work towards figuring out. In my in the that Spider-Man quote, that with great power comes great responsibility, and I always feel like those of us who are in this position of privilege, we have this responsibility to make things in a way where social welfare increases collectively. It's not just accruing to a small part of the society, but it trickles down more broadly. I think we have a lot of work in that space to make a broader part of the society benefit from all of this.
Yep. And I completely agree with that part where you say it's like, I don't doubt technology will progress. I think we're on the right track with that. But I feel like as technology progresses, humanity also needs to kind of like catch up with that progress in a sense.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of actually this quote that I was reading from Greta Thunberg, and someone asked her like, "Wow, you should be a climate scientist and all, and to find out how to solve climate change." And she was like, "People already know how to solve climate change. We just need to implement it in sense, and we need to wake up and actually take the effort to do that." And I feel like very similar to that, it's like one of the reasons why we founded Ascendance in the first place was because we felt like a lot of people, like very soon we're going to have these amazing ideas of how do you solve these world problems. But those ideas might not be implemented fast enough unless we learn the other things, the human things about it: collaboration, unconditional love, kindness, helping those in need, taking only what you need, giving the rest back to the community. And what we do today is like bring those lessons to students at a young age, so that as they grow up and become the next future shapers, the next scientists, the next entrepreneurs, they carry those values with them. So for all of these youngsters out there who want to go change the world, who say, I'm going to come up with the next way that AI is going to revolutionize everything from doing my homework to, I don't know, pulling out carbon monoxide from the atmosphere. So for all of these youngsters who are motivated to go and change the world, what's your advice to them?
I mean, the obvious immediate advice is inculcate these changes, become a more green person in your personal lives. And look, you brought an example of climate change. It's very near and dear to me because one of my favorite hobbies is mountaineering. And I actually, there was a time in life where I thought my calling in life is going to be high altitude mountaineering. So I actually went through a very grueling training program for a certification as a guide, as a mountaineering guide. And in the last 20 years, I've climbed several big mountains in 5 continents: in South America, North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. And during the process of climbing over the years, I see the glaciers receding and I see the icebergs melting, and it just breaks my heart to see how climate change is just eroding one of the most natural beauties on our planet, right? And that's why I always feel like, is there any way I can contribute through my research? But probably not, but maybe I can contribute as an individual through my lifestyle, like less use of plastic and, less wastage, that sort of thing. I think it's just, to the next generation of young people, I would say, try to inculcate that green mindset as much as possible. Sometimes it's not as convenient, but it's worth trying. Try to reduce wastage, that sort of thing. On the other hand, if you want to pursue a career, I think there could be some really interesting opportunities on the use of data science and machine learning to alleviate climate change problems. I think we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg here, because there is more and more data now coming. These problems are now more commonplace and more global, and it's not isolated in one part of the planet. So I do think that there will be opportunities, in sort of from a career perspective to the next generation, in getting trained in business analytics and data science, but then using that not just to like for marketing or advertising or operations, but rather for like more social issues like climate change. I do think there'll be those opportunities.
Okay. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So many of us, we have and this is again something that I believe in personally, that many of us, we all have our own passions. But underlying, I believe the human part of us wants to do something for the globe. And I think you give a very good solution that if your passion is in data science, if your passion is in this field of things, go and pursue it and use that business to solve the problems that are currently bothering us as a planet in a way. So I really hope that the audience is as inspired as I am, and all of those who are like aspiring change makers or are current change makers in a sense, you take this to heart and you actually go out there and make the changes that I know that you can make. So thank you so much, Professor. You have been so enlightening to talk to, I'd say. And I just hope you had as much fun as I did in today's interview.
I did. Absolutely, I did. I think your questions are great. And, I love this informal style of conversation. And look, thank you again, Harsha, for having me. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. It's so impressive at your age. You are this entrepreneur putting such valuable content out there on the internet. I think it's really impressive. I think many young people will look at you as a role model, and rightfully so. So keep up the great work. And look, when you come to the US post-COVID, if you happen to be in New York City, let me know. I would love to meet you in person, grab a coffee or something.
You are too kind, and likewise, you definitely one of the greatest minds that I've met, not just in your field, but in life in general. So thank you so much for this conversation. And audience, sorry I ignored you guys and just asked the questions that I wanted because sorry. But if you have any other questions, feel free to you can email me, reach out to Changing Reality on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel and all of that. And until next time, thank you guys for watching. And this has been another episode of Changing Reality. Bye.
Thank you.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.